The Operations and Safety Committee will now come to order. We are convened as of 5:30 p.m. I would respectfully ask everyone attending the meeting to please mute yourself unless you're recognized to speak. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Please note that under the current circumstances, official meetings of the RTD Board of Directors are being held remotely in the interest of public safety, health, and welfare. For the immediate future, the official meetings of the Board of Directors will be held via Zoom or Teams and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings along with unofficial minutes of the meetings will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. Visit rtd-denver.com and scroll to the bottom of the page for the link to the Board of Directors page. Directors and members of staff, for the sake of the record, if you would like to be acknowledged during tonight's proceedings, I'd ask you to please raise your virtual hand and wait for me to call on you before proceeding to speak. Speaking out of turn will only add confusion to the record and to the proceedings. Directors and staff participating by phone can also raise their virtual hands to indicate that they would like to speak by pressing *9. To toggle your mute setting on the phone, press *6. I would like to now call the roll for the committee members. Julien Bouquet.
Present.
Chantel Lewis.
Present.
Doug Tisdale.
Present.
Kate Williams is excused and unavailable to make it tonight. She is traveling to a conference. And myself, I am present. So that is 4 out of 5 of us. For the record, I see we have 4 directors present. I'd like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you are dialed in, press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that participating in this process, you are being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments will need to be submitted in writing. If any speaker has documentation or reference materials for the committee, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, please email those materials to the board office at the following email: rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. During the public comment, the committee will not offer comments or responses. Directors or staff may contact speakers following their comments if they raise matters that lend themselves to follow-up. Speakers should begin their remarks by stating their names, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. All righty, let's see. Do we have any speakers? All right, doesn't look like anybody is. Barbara, do you know if we have anybody? It looks like you're still muted.
Barbara's microphone is not working, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, my apologies. All righty, but okay, Director Bouquet.
I just wanted to state for the record, apologies for mishearing. I did see Director Broom is also on the call. I'm not sure if you said 4 directors present, but 4 committee members are present with 1 director as well.
Okay, I don't see him on my little list here. He's probably, let's see, Hamilton, Nabs, no. Oh, there he is. He just popped up. Yes, thank you very much, Director Bouquet. Looks like we also have Director Broom here. Any other directors that I did not mention? Director Tisdale, your hand is raised.
It is, and it's not to note any other directors present, but I was going to make one comment. We make this disclaimer at the beginning of each of the meetings now and say that for reasons of public health, safety, and welfare, we continue to meet remotely. And I suggest that it might be appropriate for us at some point in time to change that, because that's not the reason. There is no health, safety, or welfare constraint upon our meeting in person. All other transit agencies with which I am familiar are currently meeting in person for their transit agencies. So there's nothing from the FTA or the FRA or anybody at the USDOT that would constrain us from meeting in person. However, do have some continuing logistical issues with improvements that are being done to conference rooms RT&D at the Blake Street facility that apparently will be resolved hopefully within the next couple of months. But I just don't want people to think that, oh, well, we're the only agency in the country that continues to meet via Zoom as opposed to in person, because we are somehow better than others and are more knowledgeable about health risks. And the answer is no, we have some technological issues. And that is the reason. Oh, I'm hearing my echo too. That's impressive.
That's another technical difficulty.
Right. I'm the luckiest man in the world. Oh, no, that was Lou Gehrig. Never mind. I just wanted to note that for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Chair Rosenthal. I am dialed in on my phone now. I was having challenges with Zoom audio earlier. We did a test and it worked at 4:30, but it's not working again. So I will continue on my phone. We have no one in the queue to speak, and we also have no emails.
All right. Thank you very much, Director Tisdale, and I agree with you on that. And hopefully we will be ameliorating our technical situation so that we can meet in person soon. And we are looking into that. And I know the board office and RTD IT staff and other folks at RTD are working feverishly to accomplish that. And I do appreciate that. I know, Barbara, you're also in a leadership position, and Tai Shrey, you as well are working on that. So I do appreciate that and acknowledge that. So thank you, Doug, Director Tisdale, for bringing that up. And thank you, Ms. McManus, for letting me know that we have nobody to pipe in tonight and give public comment. Given that, we will move on. Let's close the public comment period at this time. Let's go to the next agenda item, information from external entities. There is no information from external entities this month. Now moving on to recommended actions. There are 3 recommended actions on the agenda this evening. The first item addresses access on demand. I was about to say accessoride. Access on demand for the board of directors to authorize the general manager and CEO or her designee to execute contracts with Lyft, Metro Transportation, Uber Transit, and Z-Trip for the provision of access on demand services. These contracts are for a duration of 3 years at a not to exceed cost of $9,344,175. Do we have a motion?
Tisdale, so moved.
Second, Director Lewis.
Oh, we have to flip a coin for Bouquet and Lewis.
All
So
yours,
let's.
all yours, Director Lewis.
All right. In that case, it's Director Tisdale is moved and Director Lewis second. Thank you very much for those. All righty. And so let's. So first, I would like to ask Michael Ford, Chief Operations Officer, and Paul Hamilton, Senior Manager of Paratransit Services, to present this item.
Thank you, Chair. Michael Ford, COO. Just so I give a little background, RTD has provided on-demand opt-in service through taxi companies since 2005. The service was branded as Access-a-Cab. While the service presents an affordable alternative for paratransit customers, the taxi industry has been unable to consistently provide a supply of resources to meet demand, particularly for customers using wheelchairs and other similar mobility devices. In October of 2020, the Paratransit Department piloted an expansion of Access-a-Cab using transportation networks known as TNCs. These services allowed for the expanded service supply and more responsive service platforms for paratransit customers opting into RTD's on-demand services. In January of this year, the Uber pilot service area was expanded to the entire district to parallel the Access-a-Cab service area. These services provide a more convenient same-day alternative, which is more affordable to customers and more cost-efficient for RTD and is responsive to all customers regardless of their mobility aid. By way of discussion, on June 28th of this year, RTD issued a request for qualifications known as an RFQ, solicitation proposals for the provision of excess on-demand service by taxi companies and TNCs. In October of this year, 4 proposals meeting the terms of the RFQ scope were received from Lyft, Metro Transportation, Uber Transit, and Z-Trip. A staff evaluation panel reviewed submittals to determine whether prospective service providers met predetermined objective qualifications outlined in the RFQ, including confirmation of good standing with the Colorado Public Utility Commission and compliance with insurance requirements. Based on the overall proposal evaluation, the panel recommends the contract be awarded to Lyft, Metro Transportation, Uber Transit, and Z-Trip in the amount, as was mentioned, $9,344,175 over 3 years for the provisions of access on-demand services. The financial impacts of funding of access on-demand service is effective for January 1st, 2023, is included in the 2023 proposed budget. Funding for future contract years is also included in the 2023 through 2028 midterm financial plan and will be considered annually within each subsequent financial year's respective budget. So with that, that concludes my presentation. We ask for your support in awarding these 4 contracts to provide this level of access on demand service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Mr. Hamilton, anything to add or subtract?
Not particularly. I think COO Michael Ford has done a great job of summarizing. The thing I think I would add to that is we have seen great success since, as he noted, we expanded our pilot for Uber to the entire RTD service area. During that period, we have actually added of our Access-a-Ride customers, 1,500 of our customers that want to use the pilot, and during this pilot period have taken 67,000 trips to date.
Wow, that's great. I'm very excited to hear this about this contract, and you know, certainly that's some of the feedback we get from the community is about Access-a-Rides not you know, being not sufficient number and things like that, so or being late or what have you. So that's really awesome. Great. Any directors would like to have a question, comment? Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just I wanted to verify one thing. Metro Transportation, that's Metro Taxi, right? So that's a taxi company that did step up, and we're confident they can continue providing those services. Is that correct?
That is correct. They met the RFQ qualifications, and actually 2 companies. Z-Trip is another taxi cab vendor.
All right, super. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Super. Director Lewis.
I just wanted to verify that the vehicles that are being used are all accessible. Is that correct?
The system is accessible. Not all vehicles are accessible, but that's actually the case as well with our Access-a-Ride service. We have 3 primary vendors that provide Access-a-Ride service with our vehicles that are accessible. We have a 4th vendor, Transdev, for instance. It's called Transdev On Demand, that provides on-demand or additional paratransit service using taxi cabs. But collectively, we are able to respond to people that, regardless of their mobility aid.
Would you, and maybe you don't have this, be able to tell me of that, what percentage of that fleet might be accessible?
The percentage of the fleet from each of the vendors that are applying to be a part of the on-demand service?
Yes.
Very small. We know that less than 10% of the vehicles, for instance, with Metro Taxi, probably the largest vendor that we had respond was Z-Trip, and they said that 40% of their fleet is currently accessible.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Any other directors? Any other comments? Fair enough. At this time, I would, okay. Thank you. Let's go to, are there any no votes on this action? All right. Seeing none, this measure passes. The motion passes. The next item is the Access-a-Ride FlexRide contract extensions. For the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to enter in a 6-month contract extension with MV Transportation, Via Mobility Services, Transdev, and Transdev On Demand from January 1st through June 30th of 2023 for the provision of Access-a-Ride and FlexRide services. The not to exceed amount for the contracted services is $23,554,323. Additionally, the not to exceed amount for fuel is $2,086,688. The total 6-month not to exceed amount for the contracted services with fuel is $25,641,011. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Bouquet.
Second, Tisdale.
All right, thank you, Directors Bouquet and Tisdale, moved and seconded. I'd like to ask Mr. Ford, Chief Operations Officer, and Mr. Hamilton, Senior Manager of Paratransit Services, again to present this item.
Thank you. I just want to provide a little bit of background again. The Americans with Disabilities Act, known as the ADA, requires public entities operating a fixed route system to also provide paratransit service to individuals with disabilities, which is comparable to the level of service provided to individuals without disabilities. RTD paratransit services are currently provided by 4 service providers: MV Transportation, Via Mobility Services, Transdev, and Transdev On Demand. RTD also operates FlexRide service in 23 areas within the district, providing first and last mile connections along with access to essential locations such as grocery stores, hospitals, medical facilities, employment sites, and schools. These services are currently provided by 2 service providers, MV Transportation and Via Mobility Services. Currently, approximately 65% of RTD's paratransit customers regularly use the agency services, and FlexRide ridership has been steadily increasing. Considering that the current contract extensions are due to expire at the end of next month, RTD solicited proposals for Access-a-Ride FlexRide services, which were received on August 10th of this year. In conference with the Civil Rights Division, procurement, and legal staff, it was determined that one of the proposers was deemed non-responsive for their DBE plan and has subsequently filed an appeal with RTD. Given the timeline of the appeal process, staff anticipates a need to extend the agreements with the current service providers. In adopting this recommended action, RTD seeks to meet the 2021 through 2026 strategic plan priorities of community values and financial success. In October 2022, RTD requested cost proposals from the current service providers to continue service through June 30th of 2023. That cost analysis was an internal financial analysis, and it indicated that a 6-month estimated cost for RTD to provide similar services internally would be $27,358,616, which is about $1,717,604 higher than the 6-month cost proposed by the agency's current service providers. Again, the financial impact funding for the provisions of accessoride and flex ride services effective January 1 through June 30th, 2023 is included in the 2023 budget. And again, that concludes my report, but we just need a little bit more time to sort out the issues that I just spoke about so we can bring this to award sometime between January and June. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Mr. Hamilton, anything to add?
No, on this particular action, I think we'd both be ready to take questions if you have any, but there's nothing else to add.
Sure, super. Sure, let me just start off with one. In terms of the fuel price, with the fluctuation in price of fuel, how do we know that they won't, I guess, take a loss on that fuel consumption? Or do they do a contract for that amount with a fuel provider that sets it at a certain rate? Go ahead,
Paul,
Mr. Ford, or
Paul,
Mr.
can't hear you. Go ahead, Paul. You are on mute.
Thank you. If I may, the fuel prices are actually pass-through costs, and 2 of our 3 vendors have large storage tanks on their property. We don't use diesel, so we don't purchase off of that contract as we do with a lot of our other buses. But the gasoline is purchased in quantity by our vendors, and the cost is the pump price cost that they have to pay is passed directly to RTD.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Director Tisdale, question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because I think the matter could be somewhat confusing to some people, let me just see if I can recast it a little bit in lay terms. We currently have these 4 identified providers who provide the accessoride paratransit services to us. Their contracts were all set to expire at the end of the year. So we offered everyone the opportunity to rebid on a new contract that would start on January the 1st of next year. All 4 of those providers did respond to the RFP, and one of them was deemed not to have been compliant with our DBE program for disability business enterprises, disadvantaged business enterprises, and so forth. And as a result of that, rather than risk having the entire program shut down and we would have to take on those duties internally, we said, well, let's just extend everybody for 6 months while we're going through this process to see if we can figure out on this 4th provider who didn't meet the DBE requirements and who then appealed, whether it's going to work out. First of all, before I ask the question, is that a fair statement of the circumstance?
That's a fair characterization. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The question then arises as to the 3 who did meet our requirements under the RFP. Is there some reason that we chose not to enter into a longer term contract with them at this point and then just take the 4th provider who's under appeal and give them a 6-month extension and look at conceivably putting them in? Or was that too much in terms of the accounting of how we do the routes, how we do the payments, and so forth?
I'll start off and maybe then I'll have maybe Paul supplement. I think the operational considerations and concerns, the facilities, the equipment, all that played into this issue. And we also wanted to resolve the issue in its full complexity so we could move on and actually do the award and knowing what we had. But again, the operation, the vehicles, the facilities, all those played into part of that decision making. Paul, would you like to add anything more to that?
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think a lot of the other content would have to be addressed by legal. But I think COO Michael Ford has made the most important point, which is if we were to have the remaining vendors that were compliant and did have winning bids take on that service, we would have had to have moved a lot of our fleet around, and those other contractors would then have had to reached out and hired those drivers from the non-compliant contractor. It would be a bridge too far. We would have a large problem on our hands in terms of being able to move those assets around and those employees around to other contractors and still be able to provide the service.
So if I can summarize that, the logistics presented simply dictated this was the best solution to a challenging situation, correct?
I would concur, yes.
Thank you. That's all that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Director Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question regarding Transdev and First Transit, because I did see an article in Mass Transit, excuse me, that says Transdev was looking to acquire First Transit. And I'm curious as if that has any bearing on the decisions that we are making, particularly the collective bargaining agreements that we have in place.
Michael Ford, CO, no, we would not have encountered that as a problem. That's something that's outside our jurisdiction, but I don't see that being an issue for us. That is a transaction that's happening that probably just affects the entire industry, but I wouldn't say that's, germane just to us. And I don't see that being a problem. There are obviously transitions that need to take place around that transaction, but from what I see, I don't think that would be a factor and a problem for us to work with whatever entity that is there, because they do have the resources and the people power to deal with that.
Okay, that's really helpful. And then you said one of the contractors were non-compliant. Is there a reason that you all haven't mentioned which contractor is non-compliant? Is that information that the board is not privy to? Y'all knew I was gonna ask. Come on. I've been here for 4 years.
Yeah, I would
Michael.
rather, given that we're in some delicate waters, I prefer not to bring that to light.
All right, thank you so much. That's my only question.
Fair enough. Thank you for your questions, Director Lewis. Any other directors have any other questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor, and any no votes? No votes. The motion passes. All righty. The third and final item is the contract award for Welton Safety Improvements for the board of directors to authorize the general manager and CEO or her designee the authority to negotiate and execute all documents necessary to award contract number 322FH 0027 to Krishi Construction Inc. KCI for an amount of $4.395 million and let's just say $4,395,002 for Welton Street safety improvements. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Director Lewis.
Second, Bouquet.
All right, Director Lewis and Bouquet. That's a motion and a second. Let's go to Henry Stoppelkamp, Assistant General Manager of Capital Programs, to present.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Henry Stoppelkamp, Assistant General Manager, Capital Programs. And also with me today, I have Paul Von Fay, who is the Design Project Manager for this project. So you've heard about the Welton Corridor blackout signs before. We've come to the board a couple times over the last several years. And so this hopefully will be the last time in front of the board. The Welton corridor is probably the number one area that we've got the most accidents, 63 accidents since 2012. And the blackout signs are basically train traffic interface signs to let pedestrians and vehicles know that, hey, you've got a train coming, no right turn. They're the ones that normally are dark. And if a train's coming, they light up with the circle with a line through it, no right turn, left turn, or whichever. So the system was put in 1994 and hasn't been updated since. It's getting obsolete. A lot of the equipment is past its useful life. So we're going in to replace the blackout signs. And as we started going into it, realized that there are a lot of the conduits, the cables, the communication devices have seen better days. So the scope has increased as we've done our design work. We were out on the street in 2020. And with the market and the unknowns, we got one bidder and it was a little bit higher than we thought it should be. Since then, we've canceled that procurement and went back out there and did a lot of due diligence, did some more design work, verified all the conduits. And then the big one is we've got a big window for construction. And, the board report on the second page talks about an 8-week window. The 8 weeks is not just for this project. We're going to go ahead and do some wire replacement. City and County of Denver are going to get in there and do some curb and gutter, some drainage. So we're coordinating with Denver and Maintenance Way, trying to get as much work that needs to be done in that area all at once. So this project is not an 8-week project, but we're going to do an 8-week shutdown that allows a lot of things to happen on this corridor. This does address the strategic plan, the priorities of community values and customer excellence. The blackout signs and the static signs will make it better for the motors and train movements. So this is within the 2022 budget, and the overall project is a little over $5 million, and that takes care of the ward to Krishy, consultant services and project contingencies and staff oversight. And we did receive $1.5 million through the PUC. PUC helped us get it through the Federal Highways Administration. So with that, I will open it up for questions.
I have a question for you, Henry. So in the 8 weeks that it will be closed, that line for the construction, will there be any like a shuttle service or something so we, people can get around still?
The nice thing, there is a bus service in that same area. I will turn it over to Mr. Von Fay to go into a little bit more detail. But yes, we will be providing service for our patrons through that area. Paul, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, the bus service is immediately, it's 1 block away from the Welton corridor, and it runs on the same headways and basically the same frequency. So that would provide the service for the residents along Welton.
And we'll have like a sign.
Signage. Yep.
My bad. You were probably answering the question. So there'll be a sign or something that says, hey, just go 1 block and you can take the bus?
Yes.
Okay, super. All right. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Paul. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions, actually, that I have based upon the review of the discussion. I noticed that the original bid that we got from KCI was a proposed project cost of approximately $4.8 million. And that was significantly higher, almost twice as high, more than $2 million higher than what we had estimated the cost would be. And we're told that the major causes for that difference, that gap of $2.1 million, was the fact that the conduit systems had been installed 30 years ago and the schedule impacts of working with the trains still running. Then we see the note that, well, we've assessed the conduits and the conduits are determined to be available for construction. So that takes that out of the picture. And we're proposing that there will be a shutdown of service. So we won't have the problem of schedule impacts of working with the trains still running. And yet the bid that we are asked to approve is in excess of the $4.8 million that KCI originally proposed, and much more than the $2.7 million that we did. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but just reading the report, I didn't see the reason, and I wanted to give you the opportunity here on the record to explain that so we have some justification we can point to if people ask, why did you take a job you thought was 2.7 million and then approve it for over 5 million under your proposal?
So if I may, Mr. Chair,
Go on ahead, please.
I'll start for the first part and then get Paul to go a little bit more detailed. But the contract is $4.395 and $2. I don't know where the $2 came from. The overall project, the original 2.7, that was for the contract. That was not for the entire project. So we knock $1 million off, but yes, we are a lot higher. So we have determined the contract, the conduit is serviceable. We've done some modifications to it. So we've had some other shutdowns. We've gone through and pulled additional wire. We've also increased the scope of the work. So it's not just the few second train coming signs. It's basically the whole thing, putting new wire, hardware, and some software in there. So the scope has grown over the last 2 years. We've determined that if we're going to go in there and tear it up, why not replace a lot of this 30-year-old technology? And actually, we're getting almost to the 40-year. No, it's only 30-year. But Paul, would you like to add a few more things that are being added to this contract that was not in back in 2020?
Well, we're adding second train functionality. We're replacing all of the original relay-based train signaling system with the new microprocessor system. We're adding software. We're just basically upgrading the system to make it match the existing new light rail corridors out there. So we're adding a lot of functionality that wasn't there before. We're replacing the traffic signal control equipment at both of the signalized intersections along the corridor. We're also working with Denver to get some TSP on there so the train runs more smoothly or doesn't have any delay at the Park Avenue or the 5 Points intersection. So we're adding a lot of additional items to the project,
which were above and beyond what we were looking for in 2020. So we decided if we're going to go through it, we're going to do the whole thing.
There's additional scope, yes.
All right, and that's very helpful, and I appreciate that because, again, we have to be able to explain to people if we're asked the question. Follow-up question to that, at the bottom of packet page 7, there is a reference that the single bid was received from KCI, and it's valid for 60 days. It doesn't say 60 days from when. As I understand it, the invitation for bid went out on August 5. Presumably it was 30 or 40 days or so later that we got that bid, but what's the deadline that we have for approval? You say it's valid for 60 days.
Paul, I think this came in the first week of October. Do you remember off the top of your head?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I believe that we're either very close or right at the 60 days at this point. They have been notified that that we wanted to move forward with them.
All right, well, and I appreciate that. I know that keeping all those dates in mind is not the easiest thing, but it's good to know that. And then the final thing is a shout out to the PUC for working with us and getting that $1.5 million from the Federal Highway Administration for purposes of some of the safety enhancements. So I just wanted to go on the record and say thank you to the Colorado Public Utilities Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Director Lewis, did you have a question?
I have a couple.
Go on ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. What's the distance in blocks that the construction is going to impact for the 6 to 8 weeks?
Paul?
How many blocks?
Director Lewis, it's from 21st to 30th will be impacted. So 10 blocks, roughly 10 intersections.
Okay. And do you know how many people will be affected by the construction?
I just saw ridership numbers. It was like 34,000 for the month of August, I believe, which was the last ridership numbers we had that rode the line in that month.
34. Is that in line with when the construction would be taking place? Because it says Q2 in 2023, or is that for like a different quarter?
Those numbers, those are the most recent numbers that I had heard just this afternoon, and I would have to double check to make sure I'm remembering them correctly. But
okay.
Those were for August, I believe, and we're talking about construction taking place earlier in the spring of next year.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a difference with August versus the spring in terms of ridership, and if that number of impact, the number of potential folks impacted increases or decreases.
I can check on that and let you know.
That would be helpful. And then I'm also curious, are we increasing the frequency or capacity on the 43 to accommodate the additional folks who would not have access to the L line that would then need to potentially access the 43? I'm assuming you're talking about the 43.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We had not discussed that, but we can. We can look.
It would be.
I think, if I may, Director Lewis, that this is more of a question for Michael Ford or Fred Worthen, but typically when we start seeing parallel service lagging behind, we ramp it up. But we will follow up and get that information out to you.
Yeah. So essentially, Mr. Stumpelkamp, you'll iterate as you all are seeing the impacts to the individuals on the L line. Is that what I'm hearing?
I will validate that is the process, and I don't see Fred on. Maybe okay. Michael can pipe up, but typically if we do see, we will put the extra loop in there if we're seeing that we can't handle the capacity of a line. And so if you think about it, it's 34,000 for the month. If you use basic Henry math, it's 1,000 a day, and you look at the 10 to 12 hours window in there. So the most you're going to have is an extra 100 people per hour. So then the question is, does that bus have the capacity? If it doesn't, we're going to have to put more buses out there. Mr. Ford?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Henry just said, Michael Ford, COO, we would look at areas where we are having trouble and where we need to allocate additional resources. Obviously, we have to look at our resources to make sure we can do that, but we would try to accommodate those needs, not just there, but system-wide, where and when we can.
Okay. And then my final question, as we're thinking about that, the number of folks that might potentially be impacted. I know you all, I assume that you all have a robust communication plan on how you're going to get folks to create some awareness around this change, so folks aren't surprised by it, but also can plan for it. That's my assumption. Is that fair?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead.
We do not have a robust communication plan as of to date. We do have the communications department tied in with us. The big challenge now is once we award the contract, we were going to do this work earlier this year, but do the procurement process and bringing on a successful bidder is going to be moved out into the second quarter of next year. We will have a plan in place before we go out there. And this will be, once again, it's not just this project. There's a lot of work happening with the city and county of Denver out there. They've got some utility work. They've got curb and gutter. We've got some wire work. So it's going to be one big packet teamed up with the city and county of Denver. And we will share that word with everybody out there.
Yeah. What do you know off the top of your head what the frequency of the 43 is currently?
I'd have, it's, as Paul pointed out, the same as the L line, but Mr. Ford, do you know what the,
Maybe like,
is it a 15-minute headway?
I would have to double check. I believe it's 15-minute headways, but I can get back to you on that. I also would just reiterate that service planning would be brought into the loop to help address the service related issues as well that you just brought up. So I just would add that to the conversation, but I can find out specifically the headways for that particular route and get back to you.
okay, that would be really helpful, as well as an update on the engagement piece as well. I just, if I can do anything to get that information out to the constituents in that area, I'm happy to support in that way. Those are my questions.
We
I really
definitely
appreciate it.
that, Director Lewis.
Sure.
Thank you, Director Lewis. And sort of building off on some of the questions Director Lewis raised, is there going to be any outreach to business owners in that area? And to what extent do you believe that this will be disruptive to both them and potentially motorists who are driving along Welton Street? Now, obviously, there's not just, as you mentioned, not just work done on the tracks and the wires, et cetera, but also the city of Denver is going to be doing some construction as well. So what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
If I may, and then I'll turn it over to Paul, but our work is not really that intrusive to the business owners. So we are working at the intersections at our communication bungalows. The wire work is typically done with a high rail bucket truck on the tracks and working directly up. Now, then when we get into the additional work that's planned out there with the city and county of Denver, as it moves through, yes, there will be impacts. But Paul, would you like to talk just real briefly about our conversations with city and county of Denver and how we're going to advertise and minimize the impacts?
So the project will, the city has plans, I believe, on a storm sewer project. They also have their safety intersection, safety improvements that they're proposing along there. There's, I think, 2 bike paths or bike routes they want to add as well. There's traffic signal work also, and that work will be coordinated with our contractor to make sure that everything, all that work is coordinated and that traffic control is coordinated amongst all of the various contractors.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. Any other directors have any other input? All righty. Are there any no votes? All right. The motion passes. All right. Discussion items. Are there any discussion items tonight? Seeing none. Oh, Director Lewis.
I know, excuse me. I know I brought this up earlier about the potential acquisition with TransDrive and First Transit. And I would be curious if it's worth a discussion, excuse me, for this committee as we move forward and how that acquisition could potentially impact the services that we provide moving forward or our contract negotiations moving forward. It doesn't have to be answered now, but I'd love for us to bring that back potentially.
Fair enough. And yeah, so Mr. Ford and others, please do maybe bring that back to your leadership team and see if you don't mind looking into that. That'll be helpful. Thank you.
Will do.
Director Broom, did you have any comment or question or discussion item?
I was trying to get my hand raised for other matters.
All righty. Well, then that will close the discussion items. Now, other matters. Director Broom.
Thank you, Chair. As most of you have probably noticed, District F, which is my district, gets its share or more of its share of derailments and major accidents. Our line has been shut down for an inordinate amount of time. And I don't think we have the right policies in place to deal with major accidents. And so what I'd like to propose, and I know there'll be a new committee assigned for operations for next year, but I want to get on the record that the operation committee should develop a set of policies next year pertaining to service recovery following a derailment or other major accident. We need to put the riders first and get service renewed. If you look around and see the highway department might shut, I-70 down for a day or so for a major accident, but they try to get the road back open and operating as soon as possible. And I just think that we work so hard to get new riders, to use our service, and then we shut it down for several months, and we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. When the police departments go out, they take pictures and they do their, investigation after the fact. They don't shut the road down for an extended period of time. So I think we need some policies in place to speed up the process of getting our facilities back open and operating for the benefit of our riders.
Thank you, Director Broom. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to second in the strongest possible terms the remarks of Director Broom. I do understand the difference between a major accident on a highway and what happened here is that there are infrastructure issues that are also implicated. So we have to respect and understand that. But even with that, the amount of time that we have taken to have this rail line shut down, what we promote as a vital link, particularly through Aurora, where this particular incident occurred and where one occurred 3 years ago, we recognize that that impact is significant on the community, and our ability to increase ridership is devastated when we show that we cannot recover more quickly from an accident. So, acknowledging the infrastructure issues that are presented, there are, I believe, at least I don't have any information to the contrary, there are no particular infrastructure impairments to running the trains. There are precautionary steps we can take, and that would be great, but the amount of time taken is something that causes concern, and we did have a public comment which was then repeated in the media reporting on our board meeting relative to other communities that have had accidents such as this and have recovered more quickly. And to build our credibility and to provide service, I think it behooves us to get service restored more quickly. And I appreciate the suggestion from Director Broom and would be happy to see the Operations Committee address that next year. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director.
I'll hire you to do my press releases. Thank you.
Perhaps do we have any update on that from Mr. Ford or Ms. Snyder to respond to those or at this time?
I know that we'll have another executive session to talk about this matter on the 15th, so I think we'll be able to come back with some more information, and that's probably all I would probably say at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ford. Any other directors would like to have a discussion item? All righty. So this is actually our last meeting for the year. And I just have to say thank you very much to all the directors who are on this committee, and certainly all of the leadership and staff on RTD who have participated over the past year in order to support this committee and support RTD. I may or may not be the chair next year. We shall see. But needless to say, it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve as your chair. Thank you so much. And anybody else have any thoughts or perspectives as our last meeting of this committee before we reform and meet with our new fellow board members starting in January when they are sworn in? Director Lewis.
Well, as you all know, I'm now running for re-election, and so it's been a great 4 years. It's been a great time. Thank you for having me on this committee. This committee means a great deal to me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to work alongside of each one of you. And so continue the good fight. And Director Broom, I'm sure you'll get that R line up and running before the end of the year. I'm going to hold you to it. You'll take good care.
Thank you for that comment, Director Lewis. And no matter where your road leads you, certainly it's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for your service to RTD and to your constituents as well. Any other thoughts? Any other comments? All righty. Seeing no other so first of all, our next Operations Safety Committee meeting is going to be in January 2023. And seeing no other discussion, the meeting is adjourned at 6:25 p.m. Thank you, everybody, and have a great evening. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.